Hello, denizens of the internet. This is Kira Una coming to you today with part 2 of the Walkaway Dress Challenge. We will also be discussing fast fashion and defining slow fashion, a little bit on that later. Now, for the Walkaway Dress Challenge, for this round being timed, I did have to make a concession as to how long it took for me to cut it out, as that took me nearly a whole day at the time, and I was dealing with some physical limitations while trying to complete this project. Note for those of you who are out there, having a condition called frozen shoulder really sucks. However, to make up for this time, I will not be using a motorized sewing machine. I decided for this project to use my 87-year-old sewing machine, which is a hand-cranked machine. But before we get into the actual sewing, we have a bit of a problem. We don't have any bias tape, or at least none of the bias tape that is pre-bought. Am I going the extra mile on this video? Yes, because I believe that there is some of you who may have a bunch of scrap cotton kicking around in your stash that are a decent size square that you can possibly use as a trim for this. Or if you buy enough, you can use enough of your fashion fabric and have a bias binding that sort of fits seamlessly with your motif. Because I've seen some pretty funky patterns out there. This was closer to Halloween, so you may have some Halloween prints, or you might have like prints based on the flag of your country, because I have seen a couple of American folks doing one with nothing but American flags. That's cool. So this is how essentially you can take a base cotton fabric, and I'm just going to use this green for my bias binding, and this is for the final project to go with the skull and crossbones. I am going a little bit more spooky theme. I planned on getting this done sooner than later, but life happens and I procrastinated. Such is life. Anyhow, what we're going to do is you're going to take a big square of fabric, fold it in half, so you get a triangle. Imagine this is one piece. You're going to cut the long edge of the triangle, and this is what will give you your bias, hence the name bias tape. The way you can probably see this on screen, imagine this lovely gridded ruler is your warp, which is the long threads go all the way down the length of the fabric, and then your weft, which is the ones that go side to side. The selvage being the edges of the weft. So, what do we do with this information? Well, if you take a look, I have this as the selvage edge. You can probably tell by how raw this is. And I have markings on this ruler at the 45-degree angle. What? What is this? Math, you say? Oh, we're doing more math, you said. This would be fun, you said. Buckle up, because math is nothing. Like, whenever you're drafting anything or whenever you're sewing anything, math will always, always, always be involved. You have a square angle, which is 90 degrees. Half of that is 45. So we have your 45-degree angle here. If you line this up, it fits right on that 45-degree angle. So I hope this visual guide will help you understand. What do we do with our two triangles now? Well, what we have to do is we have to arrange them into a parallelogram. So how do you do that? This is your 90-degree edge of that first triangle. We're going to take that and flip it around for the second piece, and we're going to have the 90-degree edges on opposite sides. So you have something that looks like a parallelogram. So we're going to line it up like that. So I need to pop over to the machine and sew this down really quick. So just give me a second.
A few moments later.
We have our two pieces sewn up into a trapezoidal configuration. You can probably see from where the join is how it sets up. Now we're going to use the longest edge of the triangles as our guide to measure out, to cut out these strips. This is going to be the continuous loop method, so please bear with me. I will explain in a few minutes. So in order for us to get the bias tape that we need in terms of the right width. We need to cut it 2 inches wide. Why 2 inches, you ask? Because it needs to be folded in half and then folded in half again to get a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Because otherwise, if you don't, it's going to look funny. So essentially for bias tape, and I am wearing my mock-up today, as you can see, it's about a 1/2 inch wide, which is what the instructions call for. In order to do that, you need to make the width of your bias tape 2 inches. So we're going to take the longest edge of the triangle. We're going to mark out 2 inches in, which is what this is for. So we've got our 2-inch marker. I hope you can see this on the camera. And we're going to mark there. Now, why are we starting from here? We need to stagger each of these marks, so then that way you get kind of, not a Mobius strip, but something kind of similar to a Mobius strip. When you start cutting it, it'll cut out all in one piece. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to mark all this down, and then I'll show you how I'm going to pin it. So stick with me for a minute.
A few minutes later.
So now that we have our lines marked up, so this is one side and this is the other side. We're not going to match them up edge to edge like this, because that is not what we want. That is not our end goal. This is not how we get a tube to continuously cut it. What you need to do is you need to move it one line up. So as you see, when you start cutting, like, yes, there's a little bit of extra, but you know, we'll get there. I plan on cutting that strip off before I get to sewing this. But once you start cutting here, it'll come around here, and then it'll come around here. This needs to be sewn into place. I need to cut this little bit of excess before I do that, and then I will show you how this whole thing looks once it's sewn, and then I will show you how it looks while I'm cutting it.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Okay, so we have our cut lines. If you are fairly good at figuring out where your cut line is, you can very easily just take your scissors and follow along. We're going to start probably from here and then work our way around. And I will try to keep this vaguely in frame. If I don't, I apologize in advance. Once this is done, we then need to iron it all down. This is the seam that I just sewed. I pressed it down. You can see here that we're going to be starting from like here, just under this cut here. And we're going to cut in a continuous line all the way across. Once that is done, then we have to fold it and then fold it again into itself. Hopefully this will save some of you out there some time. Trying to do this and then piecing it all together is very much a pain. Here's where I'm gonna cut to a sort of time lapse, and I'll show you how this is done. So now that we have our giant long strip, onto the tedious part of ironing it all. So I have my iron nice and hot. To make a double fold bias tape, we have to fold it and then fold it in on itself. So I know that you can get bias tape makers on the internets or wherever. I have some, but not the right size. I kind of regret having not bought a 1-inch bias tape maker, so I've got to do this old school. So I have to press it all down, wait for it to cool for a minute. Now that this is cooled, a very distinct fold line. So then we have to fold this in again, here and here. Press that down and then fold it together and press that down again. So this will take me many hours. I'm not going to bore you with the time lapse on this one. So I'm going to let you go grab a coffee, grab a tea, grab whatever beverage of choice while I do this.
One eternity later.
I have spent almost an entire day doing nothing but making bias tape. And I really hope this is enough. Is it enough? Maybe it's enough? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Also, as part of the construction, although the pattern didn't originally have it, I will be adding pockets, because dresses without pockets is a travesty. Also keep in mind that the time that it took to add them in, I did not calculate into the final finishing time. If you would like to see the rules and the intro of this project, please visit the video links in the description box. Now, while I do some time lapse and sew up the seams, let's talk about fast fashion and slow fashion. Now, we all know what fast fashion is. It's mass manufactured garments that can be bought directly off the rack for minimal money, made by severely underpaid workers or even unpaid workers in sweatshops with incredibly cheap materials that is usually plastic or synthetic based fibers such as polyester or nylon. Specialty items that are made by hand, such as crochet garments that cannot be replicated by machine, are quickly made by skilled workers that are paid next to nothing for their hard work, which is quite labor intensive. Since this is a video about sewing, I may do videos on yarn goods at a later date. Polyester is the most common fiber of fast fashion garments, and this often leads to high amount of pollution and waste. Now, with regards to climate change on its own, the earliest note of this is from August 14th, 1912, page 7 from a newspaper in New Zealand. The article can be found on the website of the Government of New Zealand, as well as the National Library of New Zealand's websites. I will link the information down below for citations. The article states that the coal consumption affecting climate and the furnaces around the world are burning so much coal that it's creating a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere annually, which raises the temperature. Yes, folks, over 100 years ago they knew about climate change as being caused by humans is a thing and needs to be curbed. But climate change and fast fashion aside, no one seems to really have a concrete definition as to what would be considered as slow fashion. So I reached out to the internet to help define it. A viewer by the name of Stitch has said that slow fashion is handmade, at least some hand sewing if not all. Sturdy fabrics, secure stitches made to last, natural fiber stuff. Another YouTuber, Scout, from the channel Jasper's Grimoire, had also provided comments on this. You can follow Scout over on their YouTube channel and the links will be in the description box below. They had said that not only is it, in my opinion, about use, but also the selection for use. Some of it is really, in most ways, just paying attention to the old adage of shopping smarter in order to get more out of use of one's clothing. A lot of people feel like they have lots of clothing but nothing to wear because the clothes that they get very excited to pick also happen to be ones that they're not very practical for their life or don't have good things to pair it with. Another person from Discord by name of Mari had said for them, slow fashion is about use, not making. The item of clothing itself can be from a chain store or cheap, but what matters is how you treat it. Slow fashion stands in the opposition to mass consumerism, not mass production. Wearing fast fashion jeans as your only jeans until they break is slow fashion. Making clothes that you don't wear at home isn't. This is especially visible lately when having crafting accounts forces the creator to overproduce and work fast, which also causes makers, especially young ones, to think that they need to be fast in order to be good. We need to fight it not only because of promoting toxic productivity, but also because of the amount of single-wear clothes and fast fashion trends it promotes. Also, the amount of so-called slow fashion brands who produce normal quantities of clothing and brag about being local while picking the cheapest provider and not supervising their work conditions is baffling. Being yet another producer is not fighting overproduction, and aiming to grow that brand is exactly what's wrong with the picture. I believe that only government regulations can fight it, and no amount of individuals buying just what they need to do will do, because of that they've already made too much and don't care. As for me, here are my thoughts. As someone who's in the older demographic of people who produce YouTube channels or use chat functions like Discord, for example, your body changes over time, which is something to take into account for. No one's body, unless you win the genetic lottery or unless you're a cyborg, stays the same forever. As an example, I'm a lot different than when I was a teenager, or when I was working a high-intensity physical job. Injuries and illnesses over time change your bodies in ways that you may not expect, and needing clothes to accommodate for your shape is needed, and especially for colder climates like it is here in Canada. You may need clothes to fit your disability or limb difference if you have one. I know people with mobility issues, limb differences, or need to use a walker or wheelchair, so that they need clothing that's easier to put on or take off. They have to be careful about the length of their garments so it doesn't catch on a wheel, or so that they don't trip and fall on a hem, or just so that they can sit comfortably without causing them discomfort. Injuries and disabilities can lead to employment difficulties or make it so that you can't work at all, which can lead to minimal funding for clothing. If you need to buy something from an ultra fast fashion shop, I understand your reasoning too, and if it's something within your budget, I won't begrudge anyone if that is the only choice. With that said, I see thrift stores charging double or even triple for something donated from cheap fast fashion stores such as Temu, Shein, or even the dollar store, which I believe is wrong on so many levels, which forces people to buy more into the fast fashion companies that are extremely unethical. The other dilemma is that from a report from 2018 by the CBC here in Canada, that only 25% of donated clothing actually gets sold, and then the rest is thrown out, shipped overseas to other countries to be dumped or incinerated or recycled into rags. This raises the argument of why buy used when you can buy new? Because it'll be cheaper. Fast fashion retailers throw out brand new clothes that they cannot sell that land in dumps or landfills, which again just perpetuates the cycle of environmental destruction. So, what can we do? Quite a few of my own solutions match with what has already been echoed by others that I had reached out to. No system will ever be perfect, but we can all work at harm reduction wherever possible. And here are a few steps for what I propose we can all do. Choose clothing that is comfortable to wear. If it's something that fits you well, it is less likely to be thrown out until it wears out. Repair your clothes. Don't toss that shirt if you're only missing a button. Learn how to fix it, or take it to someone who can. Yes, it may be more expensive than the cost of the garment that you initially paid for, but if it's comfortable, it's far better to keep it so it lasts. If it doesn't fit anymore, get it tailored to fit you better, or donate it if it's in good condition, or upcycle. If you have the skills and know-how, add an extra panel in, refit that elastic, let out the hem, remove the zipper and add buttons. There are countless possibilities of remaking something to fit you. Reuse the fabric. You can turn them into dusting cloths, mops, rags, rugs, or other household goods if you have the skill and know-how. There are blogs on YouTube channels, there's the Internet Archive, and just general crafting blogs in general for resources. Buy only what you need. Don't buy clothes for the sake of fashion. Get styled classic clothing. These fashions are called classics for a reason. They've always been in style or have historically been fashionable for decades and probably will for some time, so you'll always be able to look good no matter what the latest fashion fads are. Mix and match. Pick styles and colors that you can pair with other items in your wardrobe. This way you'll always have a look that you like that you can always change up. Learn how to sew and tailor to yourself and learn more about garment care. I would like to make a reminder that a skill is not gendered and anyone can learn how to sew with patience and perseverance. If you can, use those skills to maintain your clothing or make clothes that fit you well, that you'll reach for frequently, that will last even if you or your body changes, to help your clothing last as long as possible, and maybe even for a lifetime.